Welcome back. Representative Jim Himes of Connecticut's 4th District has taken on a new role in Congress last month. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi appointed him the chair of the newly created Select Committee on Economic Disparity and Fairness in Growth. Congressman Himes joins us this morning. Thank you for being with us. That's the kind of title only Washington could dream up. So tell me, what does this committee actually do, and why should our viewers and your voters care about this?
Yeah, it doesn't really trip off the tongue, does it? That committee name. That's a challenge. But here's why people should care. And by the way, my own home district, Connecticut's 4th District, demonstrates economic disparity probably as much as any place in the country, right? I represent some enormously wealthy communities, the New Canaans, the Dariens, the Greenwiches of the world. I also represent some challenged cities, the city of Bridgeport, the largest city in the state of Connecticut. And the answer to your question is, economic disparity in this country is as wide as it ever has been. And the problem with that is, number one, a moral problem. If the benefits of our economy are going to a very small number of people and other folks are living in poverty, I think that sort of is a moral issue for all of us. But it's an economic problem, right? If 7 out of 10 Americans don't feel like they can buy cars and go to restaurants and send their kids to school, that's going to hurt our economy. And so I'm just thrilled that we can take this up. I'm thrilled that we're doing it in a bipartisan way because, poverty and disparity are not just a purely Democratic problem. They're a national problem. And hopefully we'll come up with some solutions, and maybe even some that both parties can agree on.
And isn't that the challenge? I mean, I was reading some of your announcement about being on this committee, and these kind of ideas go all the way back to the Great Depression. But you talk about that being a moral problem and an economic problem. Isn't it finding the right way to sell it? Because you talk about it as a moral problem. There's probably some alarms going off in some constituencies. So is it how you frame it that maybe leads to its success?
Yeah, I'm not sure I would agree that there would be arguments over whether it was a moral problem, right? I do think there's strong arguments about what to do about it. But, I have enough faith and confidence and belief in the fundamental goodness of Americans that I don't think anybody looks at the fact that a child of color that's born into Bridgeport, Connecticut, with a single parent and, without access to resources just isn't going to live the American dream the way a lot of Americans are. That I think that probably troubles pretty much everybody. But you're absolutely right. And, two things I would say about that. Number one, Speaker Pelosi asked me to chair the committee, right? And I think I have a long track record of trying to reach across the aisle to being pretty reasonable in the way we approach these things. And I intend to continue that tradition in this committee. Look, there's no question that the Democrats are going to have a set of things that they think are good solutions that the Republicans aren't going to agree with, and vice versa. What I'm really interested in is, what about that intersection, right? What about things like antitrust and concentration in huge industries? What about stuff like, I suspect if my Republican counterpart was sitting here, he would say, municipal regulation prevents the building of affordable housing in a lot of our communities. We may find some agreement on that. So again, of course, we're going to disagree. I'm going to do everything I can to expand the space where we can find some agreement.
All right. Very interesting stuff at any rate. We would also like to talk to you about the insurrection, January 6th. We've had some time now. We heard some of your thoughts when it first happened and some of the things that we saw on social media and such. But now that you've had some time to step away from it, what are your recollections now of that day?
Well, in some ways, the passage of time has actually made it more, not less painful. I was in the chamber, right? So I saw what was happening around the chamber, but I didn't see what was happening outside. I didn't see these people beating policemen with fire extinguishers, beating policemen with American flags, hurting policemen. I didn't see that. So in some ways, what I know now is even more horrifying than what I experienced on January 6th. And look, I guess I'd say two things about this. Number one, and I care more about number two. Number one, accountability must be visited. There were violent criminal acts committed. It was an assault on our democracy and on our constitutional process. And frankly, from the person who was, holding that fire extinguisher to the president of the United States, if he's implicated, accountability must be visited. But what I really care, maybe even slightly more about, is how did the country get to a place where thousands of Americans decided that a violent attack, and it was brutally violent, despite the attempts of some of the folks on the other side to suggest that it wasn't, it was brutally violent, resulted in fatalities, was an attempt to stop a constitutional. How did American politics get that far? If you told me that was going to happen 3 years ago, I would have said you're out of your mind. And yet here we are. And I think we all have work to do. I think the Republican Party is in deep crisis because of their unyielding allegiance to Donald Trump. But I also think the Democratic Party has work to do. And frankly, I think we as American citizens have a lot of self-reflection to do about how we think about politics, where we get our information, how we feel about it. And if we don't do that, we're at risk of losing our democracy.
And of course, as with everything, there's a lot of disagreement about how to then get those answers that you just talked about. I want to just ask you about the day-to-day. Very early in my reporting career, I covered Capitol Hill a lot, and I know that the Capitol police officers and the staffers are the people that make that place run. We know the arguments about what to do about January 6th, but what's the day-to-day like there now, Congressman Himes?
It's challenging. I mean, thank God we're sort of coming back to a semblance of normal, partly because we're doing better on COVID. And so there's actually people in the Capitol now. The final fences have come down, so it doesn't feel like an armed camp anymore. And I can't tell you how positive a thing that is for my soul, at least. When the capital of the United States looked like something that I visited in Kabul, it just broke my heart every single day. So we're getting back to normal. But, the echoes of this are still very hard. I talked earlier about bipartisanship. It is really, really hard for a lot of my peers and colleagues to work with people who demonstrated that they were willing to be part of Donald Trump's big lie that the election was stolen from him. We have partisan disagreements every day, and that's great, over what we were talking about before, tax policy, et cetera. We can't have partisan disagreements over basic facts, like whether there was, the election was stolen, or whether we should stand by our Constitution first and foremost. Every member in that chamber took an oath to support and uphold the Constitution. And quite frankly, it's hard to work with people who set that aside in favor of their loyalty to Donald Trump.
I want to ask you about one totally different topic, the announcement that Philip Morris was coming to Stamford. A lot of jobs in your district. Is that a big deal? Should people care about that?
Well, yeah, and of course people do, right? And there's a lot of different points of view that I think are largely all legitimate. Look, it's going to bring hundreds of jobs to the Stamford area, and that's a very good thing. And those are great jobs. Those are high-paying jobs, and those folks with high-paying jobs are going to eat in restaurants and really help our economy down here. There are people with objections to cigarette companies. Now, Philip Morris has really dedicated itself to safer tobacco products. So I get it. I hear from people who say, why are we welcoming this company here? Look, it's a legal product. It's a corporation that is trying to make an effort to make more safe their product. So I respect those people who are concerned about it. But, job one is to make sure, at least for people like me, is to make sure that those economic opportunities, those jobs are here and at every level. And Philip Morris is going to help us with that. All
right, Congressman Jim Himes, thanks for being with us on this Sunday morning. We'll talk to you again. That is CT21 for this week. CBS Sunday Morning is next. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. We'll meet you back here in Studio A next Sunday morning.
Thanks for watching Channel 3 Eyewitness News. Watch us live wherever you are on our mobile, on our streaming news app. And you can also watch us on Roku, Apple TV, and Fire TV.